Hello everyone, this is part 42 of What If Naruto Was Like Edward Elric in Fullmetal Alchemist, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Standing directly on the top of the large body of water that separated the inner portion of Omegakure away from the rest of the world, both Sasuke and Itachi stood, with neither of them making a move despite the water pouring down on top of them. Neither Itachi nor Sasuke had their Sharingan active, just standing there in silence. To Itachi's surprise, Sasuke didn't even look angry, or even particularly malicious. Hello Sasuke. I see the years have been good to you. Not such a runt anymore, are you? That was a long time ago, Itachi. Sasuke said with not a hint of familiarity in his tone. I'm here for a reason. To me, Itachi said just as calmly and serenely as ever, answering Sasuke's question for him as he shut his charcoal black eyes. That was honestly the answer Itachi expected. How could he have been conditioned to think anything else? But he was truly confused when he heard Sasuke actually chuckle at him. Laugh just like he had a secret that Itachi didn't know. It's not always all about you. Sasuke said as he continued to laugh. I didn't come here for you at all, to tell you the truth. This just happened. At that moment an oppressive force settled over both brothers. It felt like pure malice and hatred, and everything was screaming at them to stay away from the direction it came from. Sasuke managed to stick an unsure smirk on his face as his sweat from fear mixed seamlessly with the rain. That's the reason I came here. But can you feel that? I don't think he's going to need any help. So you came to find Naruto-kun. It was still a bit of a surprise, but it was obviously a calmer, more clear-headed Sasuke facing him down. Then it is fortunate that I am in the group meant to capture him then. What good fortune for you. Itachi is a part of a group of criminals that want to kill me, and they travel in twos. What the hell do you think I mean? If you hang around me long enough, you're going to get your shot at Itachi, more or less one-on-one, and you won't ever even need to hunt him down. He'll come right to you, because you're with me. Remembering Naruto's words from just 9 months prior, Sasuke simply couldn't help himself any longer. He laughed. Sasuke began to laugh right in the face of the man that had killed his clan, and he simply couldn't stop. He laughed so hard, he hadn't laughed so hard in almost 10 years if ever, and Itachi thought he had snapped as he stared his brother down. Sasuke tilted his head up and let it be hit by the rain before turning his head in the direction where a catastrophic amount of smoke had risen. The same direction where he felt the oppressive feeling from earlier. Well, I'll be damned, he was right. I guess even a blind squirrel can find a nut every once in a while too. He quipped, letting out one last chuckle before smirking at Itachi. I'm not here for you, just like I said before. I came here to see if I couldn't help someone the way they helped me 3 years ago. But he obviously doesn't need my help from the feel of things, and you're right here in front of me. That I am. Itachi said serenely, so shall we begin? Despite the byplay between them, in reality they had never moved an inch and had not said a word. Their eyes doing all of the talking for them with their genjutsu, and that was how the battle would begin as well. XXX. Kakashi vs. Kisame. Kisame was livid. He had never been so angry in his entire life, not like this. And he had ample reason to be completely raging mad. Kakashi Hatake had sent his Samehada to another dimension with that Mangekyou Sharingan. Damn him. Damn that eye. And now that Kakashi's ninjutsu could no longer be freely absorbed and servanted, Kisame found himself thoroughly having to fight by way of not simply see through an enemy's ninjutsu for the first time in over 10 years. He was very out of practice when it came to this. Still, he was fast enough to avoid Kakashi's slower moving projectiles and attempt to hit him right back with moves of his own, though he was hesitant to use more of his higher level techniques. He didn't need Kakashi copying his jutsu and hitting him right back with it in return later. The crushing presence from before would have alarmed him, had he not been thoroughly possessed with a need to eviscerate Kakashi due to the loss of his finest weapon. At the same time with Kakashi himself, his mind was elsewhere completely. He knew what the Kyuubi felt like. He had been in the village when the lot of able-B adults went out to delay the creature as best they could. This was it. It was no held-back aura from Naruto, it was no single crushing attack, it was definitely not being sealed away by Akatsuki. It was the real deal and the Kyuubi was loose again. Unless Naruto learned that much over 6 months and learned how to transform into it. In case of the worst-case scenario, he wished to make sure that Naruto was at least alright. Fear sitting in his gullet or not just at the mere feeling setting over the landscape, this was his sensei's son and he had made mistakes of his own in the past to Naruto that he had never truly forgiven himself for. So Kisame had to go, and in a hurry. Easier said than done though, as Kakashi found himself with a touch of trouble. Apparently the rain provided enough water from the air for Kisame to easily form some of his more moisture-required attacks. Suten, Sukuden no Jutsu, water release, water shark bullet technique. Suten, Sukuden no Jutsu, water release, water shark bullet technique. When Kisame formed his water shark, Kakashi did the same, using much more chakra to form the attack out of the surrounding rain the way his adversary did, but the shark still formed and the two attacks into each other, crashing together in a wave of water. However, an enraged Kisame had been riding inside of his own shark when they crashed, which propelled him through the wall of water directly at Kakashi at a high speed. It was too sudden for Kakashi to fully dodge, thus he held his arms up to protect his body in a block and jumped aside as best he could, winding up with Kakashi taking a punch that he managed to block but it still sent him flying back, rolling across the ground until he got back up. I don't need my sword to gut you. Kisame threatened freely, clinching a fist tightly. He said this, but he was still in the wrong place for a battle without Samehada against a foe that could readily take advantage of that. He still needed a body of water for his strongest jutsu and he was about to make one himself. I'm going to enjoy this, he said as he formed the snake seal and prepared his jutsu that would turn the battle back into his favor fully. Before he could begin the technique, a blur of pink came from behind him and Kisame was forced to abandon his attack, lest he wind up pulverized the way the ground was by the attack of a returning Sakura, tch. Not as weak as you look, are you? You think a water clone is enough to deal with me? Sakura replied as she and Kakashi now had Kisame in a pincer formation. I'm really insulted by that. Don't you know, women have to be strong to survive in this world. Well then why don't you show me just that? Kisame beckoned her forth with one hand, trying to make sure he could keep Kakashi in his line of vision. You kids are all talk these days. When I was your age I took what I wanted, and anyone that didn't like it didn't stay alive for too much longer. You talk too much. Sakura ed her fist back and struck the ground as hard as she could. Ukashu, cherry blossom impact. From the shockwave released from Sakura's punch the ground began breaking up on contact, leaving uneven, unstable chunks of pulverized earth all around. Kisame jumped into the air the moment he saw Sakura's fist go towards the ground with a chuckle until he heard the sound of electricity crackling and saw Kakashi leap into the air after him with lightning in his right hand. Apprehension went through Kisame before he got his confidence back. You're not touching me with that Hatake. Suten, Sukuden no Jutsu, water release, water shark bullet technique. He called an audible so to speak and formed another S-shark from the water in the air, sending it at Kakashi's with the explosion of water in the result ending with the air only showing an electric charge instead of any part of Kakashi's body that he fell into and felt the paralyzing effects from. Reikiri, lightning sea. From behind, Kisame lurched forward and looked down to see an electricity-covered hand shoved through his sea. Kisame inhaled with one sharp gasp as B poured from his wound in his mouth. That was no cage bunshin, was it? It was my own adjustment to the technique. Raiten cage bunshin, lightning release shadow clone. Kakashi said, his arm still shoved through Kisame's sea from behind. I'm not falling to anyone today. There's still some things I need to see through to the end, for better or for worse. Now that his life was fading and that his tunnel vision on Kakashi was reduced, Kisame could feel the monstrous chakra that overwhelmed even his own potent reserves at its best. Hey, that's the Kyuubi, isn't it? The Jinchuriki's little note is why you came here. That's just hilarious, he said, laughing and coughing B until his life ran out. With Kisame's body going limp, Kakashi pulled his arm out of Kisame's sea and let him fully fall to the ground as Sakura walked over to him and triggered her chakra to try and begin healing him. You don't need to do that, Sakura, I'm fine. Kakashi said, keeping her from beginning the process as he pulled his Hatei back down over his eye. Save your chakra. Both you and I are going to need all we've got. Nodding to her commanding officer, Sakura looked over to where a cloud of dust, smoke and debris was rising high into the air. Kakashi-sensei, that feeling. Is that really Naruto? Is that really the Kyuubi? She had never felt any kind of breadth of the demonic power before, as he had never used it in earnest around her to an intense scope. Kakashi only nodded as he looked in the same direction. Stay close. And with that, they moved along, for better or worse, in the direction they could feel the malevolent chakra coming from. XXX. With Akiza, outlying a megacore village. Ugh. Akiza picked herself up off of the ground shakily, with her head swimming, until a small surge of red energy emitted from her skull, signifying a use of the Philosopher's Stone's power to heal her injuries. Damn it, I was training to control that better. She said to herself as she found herself in a half-decimated village with people running away in the opposite direction of the burst of power. Good. At least people were getting away from Kyuubi. The mere release of the powerful demon sent Akiza flying and let loose a burst of wind that tore apart the outside of this little buffer point of Am's actual main village. From her proximity she was wondering how she wasn't tore apart, and then realized once again that she wasn't a normal person any longer. At least it had its benefits, like serious durability. Now she had to get back to see what had become of her boyfriend. He repeatedly assured her that he would be fine, but just feeling the chakra of his former tenant he had been keeping within him made her feel pause and nothing but trepidation in the pit of her stomach. That would have to wait though, as countless sheets of paper flew at her from the air, forcing her to dodge, or else she would have taken more injuries. After avoiding the paper, she immediately summoned her pole arm of choice from the ground, eyes panning across the sky to locate the origin of the attack. Kuchio's no jutsu, Seki Kirateteru, Naginata no Iman, Summoning Jutsu, Earth S, the Eternal Halberd. Using her weapon and her foot, Akiza drew a quick transmutation circle before stamping Seki Kirateteru onto the ground within it to force a wall to rise up around her in order to block paper projectiles from all sides. Mixed in with the regular paper happened to be explosive tags, and they blew the wall apart, revealing no Akiza within. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Seki Kirateteru flew from the ground like a javelin at a figure flying in the air, missing the winged person as they shifted to dodge the attack. From the ground, taking advantage of the movement provided by the use of her previous jutsu, Akiza flew out of the ground with several kickball-sized rocks surrounding her body like orbiting debris. Doten, Iwa no Kujiki, Earth Release, Rock Attack. Taking aim, she kicked them right at her target one after another. The attacks missed, but Akiza was not deterred as she held her hand out to recall her signature weapon back to herself, Kaketekuru, Return. Catching the weapon and still sailing through the air at the winged person, now seen as a woman with blue hair, a few facial piercings, and an Akatsuki cloak, Akiza attacked her in the air with the Naginata, only to be met with blades of paper from the sleeves of the woman. Hey, you're attacking the wrong person. I'm not the Jinchuriki. I'm just with him. He tilted her head towards the original point where the Kyuubi had been released. Have fun dealing with his biju though. The woman narrowed her amber eyes at Akiza before pushing her back and watching as Akiza flipped down and landed on a rooftop, still looking up at her. I am not here to take on the Kyuubi. That is the job of another. No, I'm merely here to ensure the evacuation of the outlying areas so that all of the proper measures can be taken to bring the beast down. Do you have any idea how much you have disrupted our plans? The Kyuubi must be sealed last. We didn't know that, but we don't care either. Akiza admitted before pointing the blade of her weapon at the blue-haired woman. Fullmetal and I didn't come here to throw some S-wrench into your plans by screwing up your sealing order or something. We came here to finish this, finish you, and make sure you end up with nothing. This is never going to happen again. Agreed, the woman said before sharply descending in a dive bomb at Akiza to attack her directly, sending sheets of paper at her like an automatic weapon being fired. In response, Akiza began spinning her weapon like a fan to bat away most of the paper, though pieces began to clump onto her weapon and her hands holding the weapon. You can't defeat my Shikigami no Mai, dance of the formula paper, with such brutish means. More and more paper began to stick to Akiza slowly but surely, causing her to abandon her thought of directly defending herself with her bojutsu skills in exchange for actively retreating again. She didn't know what would happen once too much of that stuff stuck to her, but she had seen the woman mix explosive notes in with the regular paper and she didn't want to roll the dice with that. Catching sight of her, the female Akatsuki member did not let up with her bombardment of paper, only increasing the frequency of the seemingly infinite sheets of paper to assault the former Owagakure ninja. I do not see why we're fighting in the first place. You and your Jinchuriki lover only completed the first portion of our own ambition to end war, a dominant show of force with a power that none can match. We want the same thing. Why don't you simply join us? That seemed to strike a bit of a chord with Akiza, who stopped retreating only to stare at the woman with an indistinguishable look on her face. You. What is your name? My name is Conan. Conan, Akiza said with her brown bangs shading over her eyes in the rain, we don't have anything in common the way you think we do. What Fullmetal did in Owagakure was just supposed to be a deterrent to get me and himself out if we couldn't get away, but he never thought that what he did would bring peace for a second. It's only going to leave a vacuum. As a matter of fact, the only thing probably stopping another war from breaking out is the fact that everyone in the world is probably stopping to look and see what happens here. She looked up with a heated glare at Conan. He is not a terrorist. He doesn't want anything anymore but to be left alone, and if you guys aren't going to do that like we know you aren't, then we'll just have to get you out of the way. To be left alone. Conan repeated as if trying to come to terms with what she was just told. Your lover is a Jinchuriki, a tool that served a purpose but was twisted to be a human weapon by the important shinobi villages in our world. He will never be left alone. She then raised an eyebrow as she heard a laugh from Akiza. What's funny about anything that is happening right now? Akiza's green eyes shone as she looked up at her enemy that needed to be defeated for anything to be left for their future. Nothing, it's probably a really good thing then that Fullmetal isn't a Jinchuriki anymore, isn't it? XXX. With Naruto, there was a flash of blinding red light, then it hurt like hell, then he probably yelled like a girl for around 30 seconds straight before everything went dark. His first thought when he woke up was that he messed up and actually but then realized that unless he tens of thousands of times in a row it wouldn't have gone down like that. He felt a bit of emptiness inside of himself and felt around on his person rapidly before pulling up his poncho and his shirt to channel chakra. No seal in sight on his belly. He let his shirt fall back down and finally realized that the air was permeated with a chakra that he used to think belonged to him. Naruto started laughing quietly to himself. There. He said, quite satisfied with himself, that's a promise fulfilled. He started to stand up and saw the massive creature with 9 massive wagging tails not too far from where he was, maybe a mile away, walking towards Man, I forgot that the Biju were actually that big. Well, it was time to see just how the almighty Kyuubi was planning on using her first few moments of freedom as Naruto started running down the gigantic fox, taking large intentional strides, getting the most of the outside world for the first time in 16 going on 17 years. It took longer than he would have liked, but Naruto finally got close enough to start running by Kyuubi's back leg. Activating his seals on his sandals, Naruto created a cloud beneath his feet and began flying up by Kyuubi's ear. So how's the freedom? The turning of the fox's head towards anyone else would probably have scared them into an early grave, but Naruto just couldn't help but grin instead. So you're not going to eat me or anything, are you? I wouldn't go down easy at all if you did. How could I possibly eat the one that freed me? Besides, simply letting me out of your body should have KU, but then again you're a philosopher's stone. What the hell was that? Naruto asked aloud at the voice in his head before realizing that it was Kyuubi's female voice. That was you. How are you still talking in my head? I am the Kyuubi, idiot. I can do anything I want to with my power. Or would you rather hear my unattractive voice that I possess in this form out loud? Now is not the time for me to take my other form, there is still work to be done. You're going to help me. A nod from the ancient and massive fox of destruction. Awesome. Naruto. At that point Naruto looked over to the side just in time for a massive magenta toad to land, holding a weapon that looked vaguely like a fork-esque club. Naruto, what are you doing? On the top of the toad's head stood Jiraiya, looking ready to engage the Kyuubi. What I promised I'd do. Naruto replied, don't worry about it. Now if you're not going to help me, go away, I'm finishing this. He said without even looking towards Jiraiya as he continued to fly towards Omegakure. For some reason the rather indifferent manner that Naruto dismissed him with reminded Jiraiya of how Orochimaru dismissed him when he left Konoha for good years ago. Listen kid. I know I'm probably not your favorite person in the world, but I was trying to keep you from making a mistake. A mistake that was still made in the end, but that wasn't the point. Are you really just going to walk out here and fight the leader of Akatsuki? How's that going to work? Naruto and Kyuubi both stopped in the air and Naruto looked at Jiraiya, as did Kyuubi. Seeing the great beast actually staring him down got a quake out of Jiraiya that he held extremely well given the circumstances. He knew that Naruto and Kyuubi were on good terms but he figured it was an act from the demon in order to get his guard down. They seemed incredibly amicable even now that Kyuubi was outside of her seal. How in the world did he manage to pull these things off? Jiraiya thought to himself. Once he was done looking at Jiraiya, Naruto shaded his eyes with a hand as he looked towards the main village of Omegakure in the center of the massive lake. Do you see that giant tower right there in the distance? He asked Jiraiya, getting a nod for his troubles. Good. Naruto put on a white glove and snapped his fingers before the very top of the tower burst into flames in an explosive manner. Think that'll get him out here. However, a dome of seemingly nothing pushed through the flames and put him out, revealing the tower to be only smoking lightly in the rain. And from what used to be the top of the largest tower in Omegakure, a large bird with 3 legs, a drill-like beak, and strange ripple pattern eyes flew out towards Naruto. In response, Kyuubi roared and released shockwave from the deafening sound that stopped the bird cold in the air. It disappeared in smoke, recalling itself back to where it was summoned from, but from the same smoke, 6 figures dropped to the ground all wearing black cloaks with red clouds. I thought there were only 9 members of Akatsuki. Naruto and even Jiraiya thought at the same time. Did they put in more members after the others were K? You have no idea what you've done, do you? One of the B asked. One with spiky orange hair and a face full of piercings. There was one large bald man, one large man with orange hair tied in a short ponytail, another was a skinny man with a long ponytail, and the last man was tall and had long orange hair that went down to his calves. All of them had the Akatsuki cloak, piercings, and those strange ripple pattern eyes as if it was some kind of team uniform. You've chosen to stand against God. Pain, I presume. Jiraiya said, still standing atop his large magenta toad, having done his homework on Omegakure due to contacts prior to this little episode, so you're Akatsuki's leader. I guess having the Kyuubi march straight towards my village would draw me out as well. You would be correct on that assumption. The spiky-haired Pain said as the one with the long ponytail went through a few hand seals, but your judgment to come here was simply wrong, Jiraiya-sensei. Kuchio's no jutsu, summoning jutsu. In a large puff of smoke, a towering 3-headed dog rushed out of it towards Jiraiya and the toad he was on, Gumaken. Jiraiya said as the large toad lifted its club to prepare to defend itself. I'll try my. Gumaken's response was see off when 9's tails S into the dog and lifted it into the air before L it apart. Well, never mind. Jiraiya turned towards the Kyuubi to see Naruto standing on the beast's head as the pieces of Pain's summon animal fell to the ground around them. Kid. I'm mad at you. Really mad at you for not letting me go when I wanted to. Naruto said, sparing Jiraiya a glance before turning back towards the 6 newcomers, but I'm not going to just sit by at a time like this. I came here to fight them, to deal with them. After this I want you to leave me alone, Ero Sennin. This is it. Jiraiya knew of the eyes that their adversaries had and though it confused him, he recognized them as a former student of his. Picking sides between his 2 former students, he could obviously see which one he wanted to side with. Nagato, you were either going to save or destroy the world. I think you've selected what you've chosen to do. And while he didn't know what Naruto's motivation was, from his desire to be left alone it didn't seem to be one or the other. That was more than good enough for Jiraiya at the moment. Fine, kid. We'll discuss this later. No, we won't. Naruto replied flippantly before fixing the 6 enemies with a harrowing glare. So you think you're God, huh? Well, God, meet Kyuubi-chan. She's wanted to meet the head of Akatsuki for the last 4 years. Kyuubi let out a roar that crumbled rock beneath everyone's feet. XXX. Jushiro vs. Orochimaru. The fight between the two was wrecking the portion of landscape available to them both. A massive tidal wave of snakes with swords sticking out of their mouths flew towards Jushiro, who ran directly towards the wave that seemed that if it had been made of water it would have been more appropriate due to its size. Dokubutsu Kiba no Cape, wall of poisonous fangs. At that moment, every snake in the moving wall of snakes fired the swords at Jushiro from their mouths all at once. With his alchemic cestus on his right hand, Jushiro sat down on the ground in a hammer fist and formed a large rolling ball of earth around himself, a ball that kept growing in size and picking up speed as spikes began to form from it. It blocked the swords and crashed directly into the snake wall before exploding catastrophically. Pieces of rock and snake parts fell from the sky all around the area, hitting against the ground with loud thumps and splats. Joshiro stood up off of the ground, covered in his own bee from the war of attrition with Orochimaru, and looked around for a sign of the man. Come on. Come on, Snake Sanin. Is that all you've got? K me. K me like you K my family. You can't do it, can you? You can't K someone that's actually prepared to fight you back. I wish to have Sasuke-kun's body. But the prospect of immortality is too important. Sharingan can come later, true immortality will come now. The ground rumbled and broke apart beneath Joshiro's feet, forcing him to dodge as from the hole that had formed came a giant white snake made up of many smaller snakes with a monstrous head that had a pointed chin. It hissed at Joshiro and stared him down like the predator that it was. He didn't need to be told exactly what that was. I don't know how you did this to yourself. I don't care how you did this to yourself either. Joshiro said as he switched weapons back to his chakraman chain. You can be as big and as ugly as you want to be, Orochimaru. When I K you, it won't matter what you look like. They don't differentiate in hell. You talk so tough, boy. Orochimaru said in his massive snake body, but you have no idea the depths of which you are trying to toy with. You'll have all the time in the world to understand, though, once you're a part of me, or should I say once I'm a part of you. All of you. F off. Cursing Orochimaru vehemently, Joshiro slung out his weapon of choice at his utterly unnatural enemy. The only thing that he wanted to make a part of Orochimaru was the blade at the end of his chain, right when it buzzsawed through Orochimaru's en. The attack missed and Orochimaru s at him faster than any serpent Joshiro had ever seen move before. He dodged a bite of Orochimaru's jaws by a hair and used his free hand to grab a hold of a portion of the snake creature's en, causing a blast to emanate from the point that was grabbed. The small explosion took out a large portion of the surference around the en and Orochimaru fell to the ground in a heap with bee pouring from the blast wound. Joshiro knew that it wouldn't be that easy and he wanted the bastard pulverized and utterly eradicated from the world regardless. However, his follow-up attempt was short when he found his body unable to move. Joshiro froze right in his tracks before he could use the tattoos on the palm of his hands to force another explosion to wipe out the rest of Orochimaru's godforsaken body. He then noticed a vapor moving up from the copious amounts of spilled bee on the ground and even on his hands at the moment. The rain wasn't even removing a single stain from his hands and his head was beginning to swim. What the hell is this? Joshiro thought as he couldn't even move his hands from the position he had them in to check him over. He didn't touch me with anything, so why can't I move? I'm sorry, boy, Orochimaru drawled slyly as his snake body reformed only to show that he had been playing possum. My bee while in this form is highly poisonous. Right now you won't be able to move a muscle with my toxin seeping into your body and moving through your system. It was a good effort though. Your body should be the healthiest one I've taken yet. Joshiro glared at Orochimaru hatefully, though he was frozen solid and unable to budge an inch. I'm going to K you just so you know. This isn't over yet, he said as Orochimaru's mouth opened widely. I'll K you from the inside out if I have to. Orochimaru only laughed and s around Joshiro as if to make him truly think about what was about to happen. I win. I'll devour you and wherever you've hidden the Philosopher's Stone on your person all at once. Don't agonize over your fate, boy. Both the stone and you will be a part of the perfect being for all eternity. With that, Orochimaru's maw closed entirely around Joshiro's form and swallowed him whole into his body. XXX. Akiza vs. Conan. Akiza had taken cover within one of the buildings populating the area to avoid Conan's seemingly infinite amount of paper that could take the form of anything she wished it to. It was just her luck that she'd wind up fighting someone that was her exact opposite and had the means to take advantage of such. Conan was a long-range fighter, and with her ability to attack from the air it was going to be a major chore to reach her the way she was now. Still, she couldn't hide forever. And right when she figured that, her building was rocked with an explosion, telling her that it was more or less time to get out of there until it went up in flames. After exiting the building, she looked up in the skies and saw Conan there with wings of paper looking down at her calmly in the rain. You think I can't reach you with anything other than a projectile attack, don't you? Akiza thought to herself, biting the inside of her cheek to keep her cool. She'd need to be able to concentrate if she actually wanted to be able to fight to the best of her ability against a strong enemy like this. Hirogeru, extend. Seki Kiritateru's blade grew outward and she took a great swipe at Conan in the air, forcing her to dodge. You aren't going to avoid this one. With that being said, Akiza forced Conan to more or less dance in the air in order to avoid being shredded up out of the sky like an onion. Her mid-air dexterity was extremely impressive and incredibly graceful, but then again if she was prepared to face the shinobi powerhouses that were Jinchuriki she had to be able to dodge appropriately, even against her precise aiming and speed with her combined S and S that seemed like blurs. Eventually though, Akiza S Conan right through the torso and everything seemed to come to a stop before Akiza got a smirk on her face and unleashed a lethal combination of S. But instead of C up a human's body it turned out to be paper, as she turned Conan into confetti. What? A clone made of paper. She probably had never been aiming at the real Conan at all, something she realized too late when she turned around and saw paper airplanes with explosive tag writing on them, burning down to explode. A gasp left her lips and she quickly drew a transmutation circle on the ground with the bottom of the re-shrunken pole arm in her grasp, transmuting a small bump to snap up out of the ground and shoot her into the air, out of the range of the explosion beneath her. Above her though, the real Conan rode on a large paper airplane and unleashed many slips of paper from the bottom of the airplane like a payload that see into Akiza like shuriken. The blue-haired woman watched her younger adversary fall back down to the ground and crash through the roof of a building below. She circled above like a vulture to make sure that Akiza was good and S when the blade of Seki Kiritateru extended up from the building below right at her again. Conan was able to dodge, but when she did she saw the blade plastered with explosive tags that then detonated in the air. She was able to abort the paper airplane she was on as flaming debris fell around her, but from below she saw Akiza running up the extended pole of her weapon before jumping off of it to deliver a kick that knocked Conan back up into the air. The kick sent her spiraling into the sky before she was able to stop herself with the creation of more paper wings. Dabbing at her lip, Conan felt B and simply wiped it on her cloak as Akiza slid back down to the ground on the regressing pole of Seki Kiritateru. That was a rather inventive way to launch an attack, and that kick had a lot of power behind it. Befitting of her element to say the very least. No wonder she could swing Seki Kiritateru so easily even when it was that size. She would not allow the girl to get that close again. As long as she stayed well out of Akiza's range of attack she was not going to be defeated no matter how durable she seemed to be. She could pick her apart all day from afar without ever having to look her in the eye. The sound of electricity surging directed Conan's attention to a place behind her and below as a blue and white hound of lightning flew through the air tethered by a bolt at the tail end of it, coming right at her. A timely dodge and she was able to see the source of the technique, Kakashi Hatake on the ground below. Her eyes looked around to see if there were any other unwelcome guest but in her search she found that she had lost track of Akiza again. A glance back to Kakashi found him to be nowhere to be found as well. They could have all been anywhere in the settlement below. This was not a great turn of events for her. She needed to keep her eyes open. The roaches just kept coming out of the woodwork. But as long as she kept them from interfering with Pain and his work it didn't really matter. He had to find a way to subdue the QB without sealing it in the statue at the moment. Compared to that, two rather powerful shinobi could be dealt with. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.